What's going on, everybody? Jeff Holiday here, and there's been a lot of new people coming in and subscribing, and hello, thank you. I'm glad that you're sticking around. Now, I don't always do fun videos. In fact, sometimes I do quite somber videos, and this is going to be one of those. I wanted to touch on something that really, in this day and age, should not even be a thing. It really shouldn't. And I've covered it a little bit before, and other people have covered it probably better than I ever will as well, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we're gonna cover AIDS denialism again, and it's because I think it's not really quite stated how pervasive and dangerous this can actually be. In fact, I even went on Louder with Crowder to talk to Steven Crowder about his really, frankly, inaccurate retelling of the whole AIDS epidemic actually was. I'm just gonna go and shoot me up some heroin and have sex with a prostitute behind the Dairy Mart or something. Like, no.
I don't know about that. I'm not gonna lie, wouldn't do it, but it doesn't sound like not fun.
And this type of ignorance can have real life consequences, and those are the things that I want to share with you right now. I figure one of the easiest ways to do this is to basically show you AIDS denialists themselves and what happened to them. So we've got an article here from The Guardian. Death by denial, the campaigners who continue to deny HIV causes AIDS. Carrie Stokely is a poster girl for a different way to look at health. After receiving an AIDS diagnosis in 1996 at the age of 29, she was treated for 11 years with a cocktail of drugs. But then she saw an internet video saying that HIV was a hoax, stopped taking her medicines, and felt terrific. I'm not getting any answers from the mainstream as to why I'm healthy and why my husband is negative, and why I can quit these drugs, she explains in her video, which is currently being promoted online. I think it's a crime. It's crimes against humanity. Let's take a look at this video.
But once my husband found out some of this alternative information, we started doing a lot of research and a lot of reading. And long story short, I made the decision to stop these drugs, that it was the drugs that were causing these side effects and were most likely going to kill me.
Her doctor was aghast. HIV treatment is for life. He looked me right in the eyes and said, "You have done a very stupid thing, and you will be dead very soon," Stokely recalls. My response to him was, "That's funny, because right now I'm feeling pretty good." That was in April 2007. She died 4 years later, so her comments are a postcard from the past. Carrie Stokely passed away on April 27, 2011, explains a website run by London journalist Joan Shenton. Now, unfortunately, as you will see, Carrie is not an isolated incident. In fact, this happens more and more and more often. So next up, I want to look at Christine Magyar. Now, Christine here was featured in a documentary called House of Numbers, which is basically a giant AIDS denialist documentary. Now, my friend Myles Power did an incredible series of videos debunking this horrible documentary, and I got the link to that down below, so you should check that out sometime. But let's take a look at Christine again.
I'd already met people in the organizations, many who died during the time I was working there. In fact, when I was at Women at Risk, on the 2 years that I served on their board, every single woman on the board and involved with the organization died. All of those that were on the treatment drugs, that is. There were 3 of us who weren't taking them, and we all are still alive and well today.
Now, the case of Christine always breaks my heart, but it also makes me really mad. You see, back in 1993, she created a group called Alive and Well, and this is basically to say that HIV did not cause AIDS, which is bullshit, obviously. But it's not just that. It's that she really did convince a lot of people that HIV was not the cause of AIDS, and that in fact antiretroviral drugs, which is pretty much the only thing that keeps HIV from being a death sentence, turning into AIDS and becoming a death sentence, that those things are actually the things that are going to kill you. They're going to make you sick. Those are the real problem. It's not that you have this debilitating and life-ending contracted virus. No, it's the drugs, it's the medicine. But then, what was it that you said again, Christine?
There were 3 of us who weren't taking them, and we all are still alive and well today.
Yeah, well, not anymore. And yeah, you didn't go alone, did you? Now brace yourselves. This part is really heartbreaking. You see, Christine had a baby. Christine had a baby, and her name was Eliza. Now, when somebody has HIV and they are pregnant, the doctors can immediately begin treating the child with antiretroviral drugs to make sure, and it's an incredibly high chance that they will never contract, at least from the mother in this situation, HIV, which will never develop into AIDS. That we have an amazing amount of research put into AIDS, and through that we've managed to make it so that the children of people who have this terrible virus don't necessarily have to have it. Well, she refused. She would not let the doctors give her baby these drugs, and in fact, she continued to breastfeed her baby. And Eliza, her child, died at the age of 3 from complications from HIV. Now, the response to this from the HIV denialist community was, well, it obviously wasn't HIV or AIDS. It was actually an allergic reaction to amoxicillin, something that the autopsy did not support. In fact, the autopsy report is unequivocal. There was strong evidence that Eliza had an advanced case of AIDS from HIV, including AIDS encephalitis, brain infection. Her cause of death was pneumonia caused by AIDS. This is a common opportunistic infection in AIDS and extremely rare in an immunocompetent individual. The autopsy left no reason to doubt that Eliza died from complication of AIDS. Now, I hate that I'm doing this. I'm basically berating a dead woman, but what was it that you said? One more time, Christine. We got to make this point.
There were 3 of us who weren't taking them, and we all are still alive and well today.
Yeah, well, she died at age of 52, and while there is no official cause of death listed, she had been treated over the last 6 months before she died for pneumonia. So figure that one out. You know what? Let's not just think small. Let's think big. Let's look at the big picture. Well, we've got this article from The Independent here. World AIDS Day, Russia stands on brink of unprecedented HIV crisis as thousands of victims deny it even exists. You can often chart the story of an HIV denialist live on social media, from dismissing the scientific truth about the virus to the development of AIDS symptoms and ultimately to death. The progression is as predictable as it is heartbreaking. They said that if I don't give my son the therapy, he'd die over New Year's holidays. Of course I didn't give him anything, wrote Sofia Kuzmina on 20th March 2013. 7 months pass, and she writes again. Now he isn't smiling. He isn't sitting in his buggy. They killed my son. He's like a phoenix. Damn you, AIDS. The boy died just before his 4th birthday. Like I said, this video is not going to be very happy. It's in fact pretty heartbreaking. This year, Russia recorded the 3rd highest number of new HIV cases anywhere in the world, but trust in doctors remains low, and a joined-up public health policy lacking. Within the cracks, a cult of pseudoscience has taken root. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of Russians now deny the basic facts about HIV. In the last 3 years alone, there have been at least 70 deaths attributable to HIV denialism, many of them young children. 2 weeks ago, authorities were finally moved to action. A regional court in Perm, Western Siberia, took up the case of a woman who ignored the protestations of doctors and over 3 years withheld treatment from her dying 8-year-old son. The mother was sentenced to 18 months home arrest, the first ever punishment of its kind. 18 months home arrest. Meanwhile, the trial is ongoing in neighboring Tyumen over the death of a 2-year-old girl denied treatment by HIV-skeptic parents. For Kirill Vorobyev, a doctor specializing in infectious diseases, it is a case of too little and quite evidently too late. Why, he asked, did social services do nothing in the case of a 10-year-old girl who died in August in St. Petersburg? Activists, after all, had repeatedly raised the alarm several times during the child's excruciating final months. For whatever reason, those in charge chose not to take her away from her foster father, a local priest. And what is 18-month home arrest in any case, says Vorobyev? That is a very lenient sentence for murder. Since 2014, Vorobyev has managed a social media group on VKontakte, Russia's Facebook, designed to counteract bogus online information about HIV. His group monitors Russia's denial communities for clues about people, especially children, who might be at risk. When possible, they alert the authorities and try to pull people away. Sometimes they are successful, but more often than not, they are not. And this is the case, too, also in the United States and most Western countries, that if you find information that someone is denying their children life-saving medicine, you can absolutely report them to the authorities. And to be honest, from my personal opinion, you should. You absolutely should. Because the truth of the matter is that if you're a grown adult, I mean, as long as you're not putting others at risk, you choose to make these terrible decisions and basically commit a slow suicide of ignorance. Well, that's your choice. But children can't make an informed choice. It's child abuse. And in many ways, it's basically negligent homicide. So last, I'd like to touch on a man by the name of Peter Duesberg, and this man is a monster, an absolute monster. So for this, we're going to go to an article from The Guardian. 2 weeks from now, Duesberg, 74, a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, celebrates, and I have to suppose he will, 25 years of this stuff, for it was on March 1st, 1987, that in a 22-page paper, he set out his case that HIV is harmless. It is concluded, he declared in the journal Cancer Research, that AIDS virus is not sufficient to cause AIDS, and that there is no evidence, besides its presence in a latent form, that it is necessary for AIDS. Thus was born the Duesberg hypothesis, which his critics say has led to sickness and death far beyond white middle-class eccentrics. By some reckonings, in South Africa alone, the denialist convictions of former President Thabo Mbeki led to more than 300,000 premature fatalities and 35,000 preventable infant infections. South Africa has one of the severest HIV/AIDS epidemics in the world, about 5.5 million people, or 18.8% of the adult population. That's almost 1 in 5. 1 in 5 of an entire country have HIV, according to the UN. In 2005, there were about 900 deaths a day, but from the late 1990s, Mbeki turned his back on the scientific consensus that AIDS was caused by a viral infection that could be fought, though not cured, by sophisticated and expensive medical drugs. He came under the influence of a group of maverick scientists known as AIDS denialists. Most prominent among them was Peter Duesberg from Berkeley, California. In 2000, Mbeki called together a round table of experts, including Duesberg and his supporters, but also their opponents, to discuss the cause of AIDS. Later that year, at the International AIDS Conference in Durban, he publicly rejected the accepted scientific wisdom. AIDS, he said, was brought about by the collapse of the immune system, but not because of a virus. The cause, he said, was poverty, bad nourishment, and general ill health. The solution was not expensive Western medicine, but the alleviation of poverty in Africa. And this is probably the worst part about this whole situation, because I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this could be a human rights violation. And the worst part is that's born out of ignorance and misdirection and outright deception and lies. This is born from a Western doctor and his group of reality denialism, where they believe that they can just simply convince people that the solution to AIDS, the drugs that you need to survive with an HIV infection, those are the things that are going to kill you. Or maybe it's just because you're too poor, or because you just live in a kind of a shitty area and you have bad access to water or clean food or whatever. It's not beyond the scope to think that people should be held accountable for the actions of what they say. Because if it compels enough people to get together and cause immense, unheard of suffering and death, is that beyond the pale? I mean, just think about that. 35,000 HIV-infected babies. 35,000. Can you even fit that in most stadiums? And 330,000 deaths? That's insane. I live in a city of 156,000 people. That's twice that. That's every single person that I can see in this city dead twice over. For me, the concept of this is mind-numbing. It's staggering. It's just, it blows me away to think that this is something that really occurred and has occurred and is still occurring in some locations where people buy into ignorance and fear. And all of this comes from the same pervasive thing that I talk about all the time on my channel. The cults of pseudoscience, the fervent desire to believe in something that just is simply not real. And that's why we need science consensus. That's why we need to make sure we're still testing things. That's why we need to at least trust that if enough people are looking at the same thing, that the majority of what they say is at least going to be the closest thing we have to accuracy. If you know somebody who has AIDS and they start to express denialist thoughts, then encourage them to seek out the truth. Show them these stories. Show them the stories of women who did not take their drugs, did not allow their children to be treated, and then they both suffered and died. Of this jackass scientist who led an entire country into ignorance and death. And be proactive about this, because the only way to fight pseudoscience and ignorance is with illumination, is with our words, is with compelling arguments. And then hopefully someday, we can drown all this garbage out and something can finally give, and this will stop happening. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Like I said, I do some pretty heavy videos every now and then, but we'll get back to some fun stuff here pretty soon. Let's see, well, I'd like to say thank you to my patrons very much. If you like what I do, want to support what I do, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. As well, try and check out the YouTube Saints. It's a show that me and my buddy Nick put on. Links, as always, in the description down below, too. And I think that's it. Oh! I'm going to be at PAX this weekend. That's right, I'll be up in Seattle at PAX. So if you're going to be in the Seattle area or attending PAX, I hope I see you there. I'm going to probably put out some announcement of where I'm going to be, and hopefully I can do a meetup of anybody who's around. But yeah, I hope you're well, I hope your family's well. From mine to yours, have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Oh, hey, one more thing. So my buddy Nick, aka Wizard of Cause, he and I did kind of a little bit of a collab, and since I've been doing so many videos on InfoWars lately, I thought you guys might like to see it, especially if you want to get a good laugh after watching this pretty heavy video. So the link's in the description. Apparently, Alex Jones once interviewed the lead singer from Korn. Interesting.